I was looking at him and I said, doesn't matter how cute you are, you were supposed to be a girl. And so we're never going to be real friends.
Unwanted by his mother, ambushed by the Marines, betrayed by friends, haunted by Bret Hart, and crushed by the casket that destroyed his back.
I made the promise to clean up. I
didn't. Shawn Michaels was the golden boy living a nightmare, and behind the sequins lay addiction and a spiral that repeatedly brought him close to death. The darkest truth was that his real tragedy hadn't even begun, as the injuries and substance abuse that nearly destroyed the Heartbreak Kid were only starting to unfold. On the night of October 13, 1995, Michaels was at the peak of his career as one of the most electrifying performers the World Wrestling Federation had ever seen. The Intercontinental Champion had just defended his title earlier that evening in Binghamton, New York, and chose to celebrate with fellow wrestlers Davey Boy Smith and Sean Waltman at a Syracuse nightclub called Club 37. What happened next became one of the most infamous real-life assaults in wrestling history. Already deep into alcohol and painkillers, Michaels flirted with a woman named Donna Jones, unaware she was connected to Marine Mark Griffith. Jealousy simmered all night, and when Jones drove the wrestlers back to their hotel to calm things down, Griffith and anywhere from 4 to 10 fellow Marines ambushed them in the parking lot. Michaels, blackout drunk and barely conscious in the passenger seat, was dragged out and beaten mercilessly, leaving him with a severe concussion, a nearly torn eyelid, 2 black eyes, and blood streaming from his ears. He remembered nothing of the assault and spent the night hospitalized with his face swollen beyond recognition.
So from my standpoint, I never really retired or anything like that. I mean, I was forced to, to leave the wrestling business and I reconciled in my mind.
4 days later, Michaels was forced to forfeit the Intercontinental Championship he had just won from Dean Douglas at In Your House 4, Great White North. The WWF, always ready to turn real-life disaster into storyline fuel, used his injuries to their advantage. On the November 20th episode of Raw, Michaels dramatically collapsed in the ring after an enzwajiri from Owen Hart, selling a scripted concussion tied to the real assault. Fans poured out sympathy, unaware that their hero had simply been beaten up outside a bar after a night of heavy drinking. The incident drew heavy backstage criticism from figures like Jim Ross, who saw it as embarrassing and unprofessional for a top wrestler to lose a street fight so badly. A lawsuit was filed against the Marines involved, but it was quietly dropped to avoid exposing Michaels' substance problems in court and risking his rising star power. Yet Syracuse was only the beginning compared to what awaited Shawn Michaels. Fast forward to January 1997, Michaels was WWF champion amid escalating backstage tensions with Bret Hart that threatened to split the locker room. During a house show on January 25 in Springfield, Illinois, Michaels landed awkwardly from a powerbomb against Psycho Sid, severely tearing the ligaments and cartilage in his right knee. Doctors warned the injury could be career-ending and would require long, painful rehabilitation. On the February 13th episode of Raw, Michaels limped to the ring in street clothes, his face twisted with apparent pain, and delivered the promo that would haunt his legacy for years. He announced he had lost his smile and vacated the WWF Championship on live television. Fans in the arena chanted for Bret Hart and Sid, skeptical because of Michaels' history of avoiding losses and using backstage politics to his advantage. Most insiders believed the injury was real but exaggerated to avoid dropping the title, and his surprisingly quick recovery months later fueled the perception that he was unreliable, manipulative, and willing to hold the company hostage. Then came the injury that truly broke Shawn Michaels in ways that would take years to repair. On January 18, 1998, at the Royal Rumble in the Greensboro Coliseum, North Carolina, Michaels defended his WWF Championship against The Undertaker in a casket match, a brutal stipulation where you had to incapacitate your opponent and seal them inside a wooden coffin to win. Their feud, building since their legendary Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, carried real tension that seeped into every moment. Late in the 20-minute battle, with the crowd roaring for The Undertaker, Michaels attempted a high-risk maneuver, and The Undertaker caught him, delivering a back body drop that sent Michaels over the top rope and directly onto the sharp edge of the casket. The impact was catastrophic. Michaels' lower back absorbed the full force, herniating 2 discs at L4 and L5 and completely shattering a 3rd vertebra. On camera, it looked routine because Michaels was that phenomenally skilled at selling pain, but backstage he collapsed in unbearable agony and couldn't stand without help from several trainers and officials. Doctors delivered crushing news, warning that continuing to wrestle could result in permanent paralysis. Reflecting on the moment, he recalled,
No, it is. It's like I said, it's convenient now, getting to look at it all in the rearview mirror. Going through it again, it's, you know, it was. Look, it's why I do get sentimental. It's why I don't take a lot of stuff that seriously anymore. It's, you know, it's why I turned into the, you know, the type of human being that I am. It's why I don't, you know, I don't do podcasts and say bad things about other people or whatever. I don't, you know, because I don't have any. I've had enough drama in my life. And you know, and the thing is, look, you have to understand, I look at what I've been through, what I have survived. A bunch of the dudes I used to run around with are dead. And so I got a second chance.
Despite the excruciating pain tearing through his spine, Michaels somehow finished the match and retained his title after interference from DX and Kane, but his body was utterly destroyed. He pushed through unbearable agony at WrestleMania 14 on March 29, 1998, losing the WWF Championship to Stone Cold Steve Austin in what was meant to be the defining torch-passing moment of a new era. Triple H even had to help him lace his boots backstage because Michaels couldn't bend over without screaming in pain. Adrenaline and a heavy mix of painkillers carried him through 19 minutes of intensity before he finally succumbed to Austin's stunner. The next night on Raw, Michaels delivered a tearful, emotionally raw promo from a wheelchair, officially vacating the title and announcing his retirement from professional wrestling at just 32. Doctors warned that one more wrong bump could leave him permanently paralyzed. What followed was a descent into absolute hell that nearly killed Michael Shawn Hickenbottom. Addicted to painkillers, cocaine, and alcohol since his Midnight Rockers days with Marty Jannetty in the mid-1980s, Michaels had been self-medicating for years to cope with a brutal road schedule, chronic pain, and growing insecurities. By the late 1990s, with nothing but time and money, he was consuming 20 to 30 somas a day, mixed with vodka and whatever else was available. The WWF kept him on payroll at an astonishing $750,000 a year just to stay home and recover, mainly to prevent him from jumping to WCW during the Monday Night Wars. But the money only fueled his spiraling addiction and isolated him further from everyone who cared about him. Even during his active years, the damage was evident, as Michaels often showed up impaired, slurred through important promos meant to build main event storylines, and botched spots, putting both himself and his opponents at serious risk. His ego-driven backstage politics pushed peers away left and right, making him a nightmare to work with and giving him a reputation for being difficult, unreliable, and dangerous. Vince McMahon even flew to Texas multiple times to personally beg Michaels' father to intervene, hoping family pressure might succeed where professional consequences had failed, but denial prevailed every time, and Michaels sank deeper into his downward spiral. Outside the ring, the damage was far worse and affected everyone around him. His first marriage to Teresa Lynn Wood, which began in 1988 during his early WWF years, collapsed in 1994 amid non-stop infidelity, constant chaos, and substance-fueled arguments over everything imaginable. He later married former WCW Nitro girl Rebecca Kersey in 1999 at the Graceland Chapel in Las Vegas, but the early years of their marriage were heartbreaking for her, as she watched him pass out at dinner tables night after night while their toddler son Cameron crawled over his unconscious body saying, "Daddy's tired," an image that haunted Michaels for years afterward. His spine. Michaels somehow finished the match and retained his title after interference from DX and Kane, but his body was completely destroyed. He pushed himself through unbearable agony at WrestleMania 14 on March 29, 1998, losing the WWF Championship to Stone Cold Steve Austin in what was meant to be the defining torch-passing moment of a new era. Triple H even had to help him lace his boots backstage because Michaels couldn't bend over without screaming in pain. Adrenaline and a heavy mix of painkillers got him through 19 minutes of intensity before he finally went down to Austin's stunner. The next night on Raw, Michaels delivered a tearful, emotionally raw promo from a wheelchair, officially vacating the title and announcing his retirement from professional wrestling at just 32. Doctors warned him that one more wrong bump could leave him permanently paralyzed. What followed was a descent into absolute hell that nearly killed Michael Shawn Hickenbottom. Addicted to painkillers, cocaine, and alcohol since his Midnight Rockers days with Marty Jannetty in the mid-1980s, Michaels had been self-medicating for years to cope with a brutal road schedule, constant pain, and growing insecurities. By the late 1990s, with nothing but time and money in front of him, he was consuming 20 to 30 somas a day, mixed with vodka and anything else he could find. The WWF kept him on payroll at an astonishing $750,000 a year just to stay home and recover, mainly to prevent him from jumping to WCW during the heated Monday Night Wars. But the money only fueled his spiraling addiction and pushed him further away from everyone who cared about him. Even during his active years, the damage was obvious, as Michaels often showed up impaired to events, slurred through important promos meant to build main event storylines, and botched spots because his dulled senses put both him and his opponents at serious risk. His ego-driven backstage politics pushed away peers left and right, turning him into a nightmare to work with and giving him a reputation for being difficult, unreliable, and dangerous. Vince McMahon even flew to Texas multiple times to personally beg Michaels' father to intervene, hoping family pressure might help where professional consequences had failed, but denial won every time and Michaels continued sinking deeper into his downward spiral. Outside the ring, the damage was far worse and affected everyone around him. His first marriage to Teresa Lynn Wood, which began in 1988 during his early WWF years, collapsed in 1994 after non-stop infidelity, constant chaos, and substance-fueled arguments over everything imaginable. He later married former WCW Nitro girl Rebecca Kersey in 1999 at the Graceland Chapel in Las Vegas, but the early years of their marriage were heartbreaking for her as she watched him pass out at dinner tables night after night while their toddler son Cameron crawled over his unconscious body saying, "Daddy's tired," an image that haunted Michaels for years afterward. Bad Blood in October 1997, they delivered the first ever Hell in a Cell match, 30 grueling minutes of pure carnage where both men bled from real injuries and pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. The Undertaker reportedly told Michaels backstage afterward, "You ever pull that political stuff with me, I'll break your jaw for real." Their follow-up Royal Rumble 1998 casket match would end Michaels' in-ring career for 4 years when the back body drop onto the coffin edge destroyed his spine. The Clique controversy had actually happened over a year before all this backstage drama. On May 19, 1996, at Madison Square Garden, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall worked their final WWF matches before jumping to WCW for guaranteed contracts. After the show, Hall, Nash, Michaels, and Triple H, all real-life best friends who partied, constantly embraced in the ring in a four-way hug while 20,000 stunned fans watched in disbelief. Babyfaces were hugging heels openly in front of the audience, shattering the sacred kayfabe that wrestling relied on, and Vince McMahon was furious at the blatant disrespect for tradition. Triple H was harshly punished by being stripped of his planned 1996 King of the Ring victory, which was instead given to Stone Cold Steve Austin, unintentionally launching Austin's legendary career and the iconic Austin 3:16 phenomenon. Michaels, as the reigning WWF champion and Vince's chosen golden boy, was untouchable and faced no consequences. The incident cemented the Clique's notorious reputation as a group that operated above the rules and wielded dangerous backstage power. Even during his celebrated 2000s comeback, Michaels' feuds carried real-life heat and resentment. At SummerSlam 2005, Hulk Hogan returned for a single match against Michaels but insisted on winning with no rematch. Michaels agreed publicly but was privately furious at Hogan's ego and refusal to work properly. During the match, Michaels cartoonishly oversold every piece of Hogan's offense, flipping 15 feet in the air from simple punches and dramatically flopping out of the ring on the leg drop, making the bout look absurd. Hogan refused to shake Michaels' hand afterward and publicly said, "He tried to make me look like a complete fool. I'll never forgive him for that." Michaels maintained that he simply did exactly what Hogan asked made him look strong, just not in the way Hogan expected. By January 2010, Bret Hart finally forgave Shawn Michaels publicly after 12 years of real hatred, and on Raw they shook hands and embraced in an emotional reconciliation that brought closure to wrestling's longest-running real-life feud. Bret later said in interviews, "The man he is now is not the man who screwed me back in Montreal." But that remarkable transformation from villain to respected elder statesman didn't come from wrestling or time alone, it came through something far more powerful and unexpected: his Christian comeback and the legacy of Mr. WrestleMania. By 2001, Michael Sean Hickenbottom was unrecognizable from the cocky, charismatic Heartbreak Kid who had thrilled millions in the 1990s, bankrupt from failed dot-com investments, addicted to every substance he could find, and utterly isolated in his sprawling San Antonio mansion. He was a broken man waiting to die. Then one Sunday morning in early 2002, his wife Rebecca physically dragged him to a non-denominational Christian church against his will. Michaels sat reluctantly in the very back row, dark sunglasses on, arms crossed defiantly, daring God to do something meaningful. The pastor that morning preached on the biblical prodigal son, the story of a wayward child who squandered everything before returning home to find forgiveness and redemption waiting. Michaels began crying so uncontrollably that he had to leave the sanctuary to avoid making a scene, and in the church parking lot he fell to his knees on the concrete and prayed what he later described as the only completely honest prayer of his entire adult life. On April 24, 2002, Shawn Michaels became a born-again Christian, committing fully to changing his life, checked into a rehabilitation facility the very next week, flushed every pill he owned down the toilet, and has not touched drugs or alcohol since that transformative moment. While his return to professional wrestling just months later shocked the entire industry and everyone aware of his medical and personal history, SummerSlam 2002, Michaels faced his former D-Generation ex-partner, Triple H, in an unsanctioned street fight with no rules or restrictions, and nobody backstage knew if his surgically repaired body could survive such punishment. At 37, with titanium rods and screws still embedded in his lower back from the 1998 fusion surgery that was supposed to end his career, Michaels delivered a true resurrection, winning with a dramatic roll-up, collapsing from exhaustion and emotion, only to pop back up off the stretcher and dance back to the ring, signaling the rebirth of the showstopper. Between 2002 and 2010, he arguably surpassed his legendary 1990s prime, capturing the World Heavyweight Championship in the inaugural Elimination Chamber match, surviving 39 brutal minutes against 5 competitors, and delivering instant classics, including his WrestleMania 19 feud with Chris Jericho and a 27-minute technical masterpiece against Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21, proving that even after years of devastating injuries, his body and talent remained at the highest level. In 2006, Michaels reunited D-Generation X with Triple H, creating the most commercially successful and entertaining version of the rebellious stable ever, selling millions in merchandise and drawing massive television ratings. His 2008 feud with Chris Jericho turned intensely personal, blurring the line between storyline and reality, as Jericho viciously called Michaels a fake Christian who lied to his family daily, attacking everything Michaels held sacred. During a July Raw, Jericho slammed Michaels' head into the giant Jumbotron, leaving him bloodied and battered, reminiscent of his brutal 1997 era, and at SummerSlam, Jericho's storyline intentionally targeted Michaels' real wife, Rebecca, generating extreme audience heat. Their subsequent unsanctioned match at Unforgiven saw Michaels enter in pristine white trunks that quickly became soaked in his own blood, ultimately losing by referee stoppage in one of the most emotionally charged and physically brutal matches of the decade. Yet nothing compared to his final legendary rivalry with The Undertaker. At WrestleMania 25 in 2009, Michaels descended from the heavens on a moving platform in an angelic white suit, embodying pure light against The Undertaker's darkness. For over 30 minutes, they delivered near fall after near fall, leaving fans openly weeping, and the following year at WrestleMania 26, they faced off again in a career versus streak match, with Michaels wagering his entire career against The Undertaker's undefeated WrestleMania streak. When Michaels slapped The Undertaker on Raw in the weeks leading up to their match and boldly declared, "I'm not asking for your respect anymore. I'm taking it," it set the stage for a career-defining finale. When The Undertaker delivered the decisive Tombstone Piledriver at WrestleMania 26, ending Michaels' in-ring career, the cameras captured his young son Cameron crying at ringside. Their WrestleMania 25 match in 2009 is widely regarded by fans and experts as one of the 2 greatest matches in WrestleMania history, with Michaels descending dramatically from the heavens on a moving platform in an angelic white suit, symbolizing pure light against The Undertaker's darkness and evil. For over 30 consecutive minutes, they delivered near fall after near fall, leaving grown men in the audience openly weeping with emotion. The storytelling was flawless, and the athleticism seemed impossible for men of their age. The following year at WrestleMania 26, they met again in a career versus streak match, with Michaels betting his entire career against The Undertaker's legendary undefeated WrestleMania streak. Michaels slapped The Undertaker hard across the face on Raw in the weeks leading up to their match and boldly declared, "I'm not asking for your respect anymore. I'm taking it." When The Undertaker finally hit the decisive Tombstone Piledriver to end the match and Michaels' career, the camera captured his young son Cameron crying openly at ringside. The dead man looked down at his fallen opponent with genuine respect and whispered something before making the 3 count that ended an era. Michaels later reflected on that moment with surprising peace, saying, "That was the only time I ever lost a match and genuinely felt like I won." He walked slowly up the entrance ramp on March 28, 2010, stopped to kiss his wife and children goodbye, saluted the emotional crowd one final time, and disappeared into the tunnel for 8 full years. The longest any top wrestling star has genuinely honored a retirement, Michaels stayed completely away from the ring. Faith motifs and Christian imagery defined his remarkable second career and personal transformation. He knelt visibly in prayer during ring entrances, wore gear emblazoned with crosses and religious symbols, and shared his testimony of redemption wherever possible. In his deeply personal 2015 memoir, Wrestling for My Life, Michaels detailed how Christianity completely transformed his chaotic world, turning a troubled, selfish icon into a redeemed family man and positive ambassador for both wrestling and faith. He even starred in the faith-based inspirational film The Resurrection of Gavin Stone in 2017, embodying themes of redemption and second chances on the big screen. His one significant return at Crown Jewel 2018 in Saudi Arabia, teaming with Triple H against The Undertaker and Kane in a Dream Tag Team match, is widely regarded as one of the worst high-profile matches in recent wrestling history. The four legends looked old, slow, and completely disconnected from their prime years. Michaels has repeatedly stated that he deeply regrets returning for that match and only agreed to do it for the money, reportedly a staggering $3 million for one night's work. The Saudi match momentarily tarnished the perfect ending he had crafted at WrestleMania 26, but ultimately nothing could erase decades of brilliance and artistry. Today, at 60, with gray in his hair and wisdom in his eyes, Shawn Michaels serves as Senior Vice President of Talent Development Creative for WWE's NXT brand, helping shape the next generation of superstars. He has personally trained, mentored, and developed emerging stars like Braun Breaker, Roxanne Perez, Wes Lee, and Carmelo Hayes. Triple H has publicly credited Michaels as the primary architect of the critically acclaimed black and gold NXT era that revolutionized developmental wrestling. William Regal once revealed something telling about Michaels' transformed reputation backstage. Every young wrestler in NXT calls him Pastor Shawn behind his back, half joking, half serious, a nickname that speaks volumes about how completely he has changed. His body still bears the permanent scars of a legendary career and the punishment he absorbed over 25 years. In August 2024, Michaels underwent major surgery to finally remove the 26-year-old titanium hardware from his 1998 back fusion, which had been causing chronic issues. Kevin Nash has publicly revealed that Michaels currently awaits double knee replacements to address the damage accumulated from countless moons, ladder dives, and superkicks. The physical toll of entertaining millions never truly ends. From the absolute lowest lows of addiction and despair to the highest redemption of faith and family, Shawn Michaels didn't merely wrestle his way into professional wrestling history, he prayed, bled, and sweet chin musicked his way into immortality twice. That's all for now, folks, and thank you for watching. To enjoy more of this content, click on the card showing on the screen.